At 6:36 p.m. on Valentine's Day, a pipe burst on the ceiling of the Gaylord National Harbor's exhibit hall, and a torrent of putrid water erupted over the crowded artist alley of one of the largest anime conventions on the East Coast, Katsucon, destroying the artist merchandise, soaking attendees, and flooding TikTok and even real news media with sewage pipe burst at Katsucon. But how did this pipe burst? Whose fault is this? And did it really rain poop at Katsucon? In the anime convention community, Katsucon is a big deal on the East Coast, especially for the cosplayers. Every Valentine's Day, cosplayers gather in their fanciest, newest, most beautiful builds to take full advantage of the venue's gorgeous indoor atrium, with building sets, creeks, fountains, and a giant wall of windows letting in way too much backlight while you're trying to get a picture in the iconic gazebo. The Gaylord is actually part of a chain of hotels that are owned by Marriott, and these are fancy places. You get high-style atriums, high-priced rooms, and apparently high-altitude sewage pipe ruptures. I'm telling you about the atrium just so you have an idea of how fancy this place is. The pipe burst actually happened in the convention center portion of the Gaylord, in the Prince George Exhibition Hall, a fancy name for a boring trade show floor, which had been sectioned off into 3 rooms for Katsucon. The dealer's room, where vendors sell official anime merchandise, registration, and the artist alley, where independent artists have booths to sell any kind of handmade or artistic goods. That can mean stickers or art prints, crochet projects, $200 handmade plushies. As long as it's their own art and it's not AI, then they are allowed to sell it. For some of the artists, this is their full-time job. Their only source of income is traveling around from convention to convention, selling their artwork at artist alleys, and relying on that profit to pay their bills. But the way these booths work is the artist has to purchase that booth, but that's just a table and some chairs. Any displays or signs come out of the artist's pocket. And they are, of course, then also paying for all of their own merchandise, whether that's to get art printed or machines to embroider or yarn for crochet, and the hours and hours and hours and hand cramps that it took to make that thing. And that also doesn't count the hours that they spend at the booth selling those products, trying to make that profit. And they all would have been tending their booths for about 6 hours when 2 hours before closing, on the first day that the artist alley was even open, water started pouring from the ceiling. Hibiscus Stitch had a premium booth at the end of the D and E row, and they specialize in handmade plushies that take days of work to complete. The crown jewel of this booth was a $200 life-size plushie of Hisuian Zorua. It's a new Pokemon, I might not say that right. I reached out to Hibiscus and they told me this. It was a literal nightmare scenario. I was talking to a customer when I suddenly hear a waterfall and am hit with the worst odor I've ever smelled. They then took this video.
Oh no. Oh no. During vending hours today at around 5:36, the sprinkler system just started flooding the hall, and some of our products were hit. We're not sure the total extent of anything until we have time to check back on things. It did smell really terrible in there when the leak started. We are definitely very devastated and just feel numb and upset about everything.
This is what we know. The burst happened at the very end of the walkway between the E and the F row, but the water flow was wide enough and strong enough that it was splashing into booths all around this area. In this video from Twitter user Goo, you can really get an idea of how much water was pouring in.
Not touching you.
What's strange though is the water's not coming from just one point. It's spreading out almost like it's a waterfall. In the chaos of the moment, my table was shoved out of the way by someone, which led to my display tilting, sending plushies falling, including the $200 Zorua. It's like slow motion when I think back to seeing it falling off the top of my table. That one plush represents days of my life that go into making sure every detail is perfect. There's finding the fabric I need, the right thread, stuffing, poly pellets, safety eyes, scissors, needles, thimbles, bobbin. It's a lot of work, and it's my love of sewing, and it's about to get hit with waterfall. It was only saved by another attendee catching it before it hit the water. Hibiscus and their plushies were luckily safe, but they were on the D row. Their neighbor at E24 and 25 was Huazon, in another premium booth, primarily selling art prints, paper products that are now getting soaked. Some attendees helped us push our table and things out of the way. A few of the other tables were pushed away as the puddles started pooling on the floor and spreading out. You can see Hua and their assistants scrambling to move their belongings as quickly as possible in various videos. And from everything I looked at, this booth got hit the hardest. And considering they were primarily selling paper products, they potentially incurred the most damages. But they were not alone. The entire John V. Salavino booth gets pulled out of the way by this Love is War cosplayer, a booth that was originally located at F24. The Oblius booth, a booth selling t-shirts at F25 and 26, is getting covered by tarps, and it looks like someone's dragging the entire facade backwards. By now, it was clear that everybody had to get out, and the attendees did, but the artists stayed. The staff vacated the hall right after the break and closed the artist alley early. Ember Rose was at C24 and she provided some extra photos and videos, and through those, we can see the aftermath. Eventually, the water did calm down and the Gaylord maintenance staff is already getting on a scissor lift to check out the leak. The ends of the D and E row have been completely cleared and are now scattered in the walkways, and a lone red trash can has replaced the Huazon booth. After the hall was cleared, the leak was patched up temporarily, and we spent at least an hour sorting through the damage, wiping down what we could with some sanitizing spray, and grouping our things off to the side. We were asked to focus on quickly sanitizing what we could and sorting it out later because it was still unclear how toxic the fumes and residue were. They also wanted us out of there so that the hotel could start working on the pipe. The artist alley then closed an hour and a half earlier than planned, leaving artists wondering if they'd even have one to come back to the next day. And apparently the scissor lift guy damaged somebody's booth, according to Hibiscus. I didn't go to Katsucon this year, but I became aware of the situation on Saturday morning when my Discord mods started flagging conversations in the spacecraft about a sewage spill at Katsucon. They went in to shut that down because we don't allow rumors to spread in our crafting server, but there was nothing stopping rumors from spreading on the rest of the internet. While Hibiscus Stitch had thought that the water was from the sprinkler system, most posts were claiming that the leak was sewage because it smelled like poop emoji. From Calico, an artist at D18, it smells like unprocessed sewage. We don't know if we'll be let back in tomorrow. Moments before the Dookie water disaster, sewage pipe burst. Disgusting. Katsucon has become a biohazard, and Hua's Instagram story becomes a shocking before and after. This video from Shop Azula, who was at C9, got reposted quite a lot.
Have you ever got rained on by poop water before? Well, now you can at Katsucon. Just kidding. Actually don't know if it's poop water, but it smells like poop. Apparently the pipe broke around 6:30 on Friday in the artist alley, and we all had to leave and pack up our stuff because the smell was just overwhelming. We don't know if the artist alley is opening on time or even at all tomorrow, but shout out to the artist alley staff at Katsucon for trying to do as much as they can. Alright, stay safe y'all. Bye.
Despite the fact that Azula stated that they did not know what kind of water it was, the sewage claim went so far that even real news media picked up the story.
People at Katsucon, a 3-day multicultural cosplay and anime convention at the National Harbor, tell us that a pipe burst, sending what they say is sewage onto guests and artists' work. A mother whose daughter was there sent us these photos, telling us her daughter was drenched. She was helped by staff there with first aid.
She was covered in raw sewage from head to toe. The medics came, they took her in the back, tried to help clean up her eyes. Her friends had to take off their coats to help her. She's traumatized, the smell, just to being exposed to whatever could have been in there.
Now, we reached out to the Gaylord and they confirmed that a pipe did burst, that they have been dealing with pipe issues this week. However, they're unaware of when that problem will be fixed, and it's not clear what this means for the rest of that convention.
And after seeing all this ruckus, I had to know what was going on, but I was 500 miles away, so I called in the troops. Enter Hey Lizard Lee, a fellow cosplay YouTuber and kind of an expert on Katsucon. I also got some extra B-roll of the con from my friend Alyssa, who was there too, so thank you to them both. Lee's gonna tell us a little more about Katsucon later. For now, I wanted to know what kind of water it was. After seeing the water fall from the ceiling, my first thought was, why would a sewage pipe be on the ceiling? My first theory was actually the same as hibiscus stitches, that it was the fire sprinkler system. If the water was stinky, then it would make sense that it was the fire sprinklers because those pipes are actually usually just always full of still water. Just as still water turns foul, stagnation leads to decay. The still water harbors bacteria, so it's good enough to put out a fire, but it stinks. But it could only be the fire sprinklers if the fire alarm was going off too, because all of those systems are connected and they know when one of them is triggered. And we know that the fire alarm didn't go off. That was the 2016 Katsucon disaster. Katsucon always kind of has something. It also can't be a roof leak because the exhibition hall is on the ground level and there was no water at the opening ceremonies directly above it. Actually, opening ceremonies was directly above a portion of the artist alley. We'll get to what was over the leak in a minute, but it wasn't a roof leak. So what other pipes could it be? I was able to find this photo from one of the Gaylord's layout pamphlets, and I spoke to an anonymous pipe expert to help determine what we're looking at. We know where the affected booths were from the con's maps, and we know that we're primarily looking at this cluster of pipes that run above the HVAC system. Those giant roundy boys, those are not pipes, those are HVAC ducts. And unfortunately, without blueprints, the only pipes in these photos that we can for sure identify are the sprinklers because they have the heads, and we know it wasn't those. But we don't even need to analyze random photos from the brochure because Saturday morning, Katsucon posted this. We've spoken with the Gaylord this morning and we have some updates. Despite social media posting, the leak was gray water from the Gaylord's kitchens. Kitchen waste pipe. Okay, I still have so many questions. Okay, if it's not sewage, what is in a kitchen water waste pipe? Why did it smell so bad? But more importantly, why did it burst and why did they let it burst over a convention? The most common way pipes burst is obviously freezing, and it was actually cold enough that day for water to freeze. But if you live in an area where pipes do freeze, you know that they don't if you drip your taps because running water doesn't sit long enough to actually freeze. I know people are probably like, why are you even explaining that? I'm from the South. I didn't learn that until I was like 25. And if this was a waste pipe for the convention center kitchens at dinner time on Friday night, then it would have been flowing. And we know it was flowing because it flooded the long-tailed titties, whatever that means. There were a couple of rumors going around that there had been leaking at MagFest, a gaming convention held in the same venue just a few weeks earlier. But I could not find any proof of that happening, so this is a random internet speculation. Please do not sue me, Gaylord. All we know for sure is that the con was told that it was a kitchen waste pipe, and neither Katsu nor the Gaylord have said anything about what caused the burst. The Gaylord has actually posted nothing about it. It's probably not hard to understand what is in a kitchen water waste pipe or why it smelled bad. This is water that's being used to clean the Gaylord's commercial kitchens. So we're talking about food waste, soap, potentially cleaning chemicals. It's nasty and it smells, but it's not a biohazard, though it still caused a lot of damage. By the next morning, around 8 a.m., convention staff were still waiting for information from the hotel and didn't know when we'd be allowed back into the room. Luckily, it didn't take too long and the artists were allowed back in the room at 9 a.m. Artists were asked to check their stock for any damage or smell and to let the staff know if anything was damaged. I believe around 9 artists had to relocate to other parts of the artist alley because of their proximity to the leak location. We were mainly moved to the entrance and exit of the hall. Originally, the hall was supposed to open at 9:30 a.m. for VIPs and 10 a.m. for the general public, but they adjusted it to open at 12. After getting feedback from many artists, the convention staff extended the closing time from the original 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. so artists could get more selling hours in. This was very appreciated. And when the hall reopened at noon on Saturday, it was back to business for everyone. The leak area had been replaced by a roped-off section of tables and a sign and a security guy. But when Lee explored this area on Sunday, they also captured this.
Oh geez. There was a drip there. I don't think I got it on camera. but a drip just dripped.
One of the things I have been weirdly obsessed with while combing through these videos is trying to figure out which of these pipes was dripping the water. The Shopazula clip has the best angle, but it's so dark on the ceiling you cannot tell where it's coming from. But this clip from Lee tells us a lot. There's 2 drips in this clip, but the second one is the most visible, and if we go frame by frame, the drip becomes visible as it starts approaching the light fixture. But it is clearly coming from above the light, and if you follow that line, it seems like it's coming from this thin silver pipe. But I don't even know if this pipe is the culprit, because in all of the videos, the water isn't coming from one point. It is creating a huge waterfall parallel to the giant HVAC duct on the ceiling. This tweet from Magus has the clearest image of where the water was coming from, but it's still so unclear. At first, I thought that this faint line was water shooting out of the silver pipe and onto the HVAC duct, which would explain what shot the water all over the place. And if you look at the Calico video, there's this big leak and then a smaller leak over by the light. And in the Goo video, again, it's running parallel to the silver pipe. It could be the pipe that caused everything, and I can't be sure. But if you look at the map, the floor above this area is all service area, meaning that could easily be where those kitchens are. But my pipe expert said that the silver pipe is most likely an electrical conduit. My theory as a speculating YouTuber who looked at a bunch of stuff is that that silver pipe is the pipe that caused all the hubbub and that this is all the Gaylord's fault. My pipe expert's opinion was that the thing I thought was water hitting the HVAC duct was actually just a strut for something else in the background, and that the burst pipe is most likely running directly on top of the HVAC duct, and that's why there's no clear picture of where it is. Except there is, because of the image from the brochure. Sure enough, there's a pipe directly above the main HVAC duct, which explains why the water fell the way it did. It waterfalled off the side of the HVAC duct and trickled off the other side. It would also make sense for Lee's clip. The angle matches up well with it just dripping right off the side of the duct. Just goes to show that your average YouTuber knows as much about pipe as your average newscaster. While the con jumped in pretty quickly to let everyone know what information they had been given by the venue, and despite the fact that the Katsucon staff is not the Gaylord's elite otaku maintenance team, I saw a lot of people blaming the con for this, and the sewage narrative was causing a huge stink. And wow, isn't that just a symptom of a problem plaguing us in everything from politics to poop, misinformation? And frankly, I'm kind of sick of seeing cosplayers do this, but I'm even more sick when it's real news media doing it. They jumped on this story faster than the truth could put its pants on and spread out claims that they were getting from social media, leaving ABC to shit the bed. ABC never posted an updated video and didn't update their article until Sunday to mention that it was not sewage. Listen, alerting people to real danger is one thing. If it had been sewage, yes, you would want to be encouraging people to go get checked out. But alarming people before knowing all the facts is dangerous in itself, especially when we're talking about people's livelihoods. If all you heard was that it was sewage, that's gonna discourage you from going back to the artist alley the next day for fear that it's a real biohazard. Though I have so much understanding for the people at Katsucon who posted about this that were just going with whatever they heard. I get it. I make mistakes all the time. I just told everybody that they needed a respirator for a glue whose safety data sheet only requires adequate ventilation because somebody told me that that glue made them lightheaded. And I got rightly roasted for that. You do not need a respirator for uwu glue. You do need to be using it outside, but you also get extra brownie points from me if you wear a respirator too. What is up with all the myths about Katsucon?
I 100% believe that Katsucon ends up like having such an outsized footprint on like the drama economy because the convention doesn't really do a lot as far as nighttime activities. Pretty much the things that you can do at Katsucon are walking around, meeting up with friends, taking pictures, and going to the artist alley and dealer's room. There's not a ton of programming. I think the convention has had a lot of failures over the last couple of years that have led to this culture of a burst water pipe instead of it being something that attendees can clearly recognize as a problem with the Gaylord. Will instead be saying, oh, there's always something at Katsucon, like this is just classic for Katsucon, something crazy always happens. That would not be the response if this happened at basically any other convention. I understand why this stuff takes off because it's very fun, it's very quippy. It's not exciting to say cosplayers did a shoot and then behaved normally. It's much more fun to say, oh my god, did you hear that someone flooded a bathtub with gummy bears and then put them in the hallway and people were eating them? But one is true and one is not.
I will always call out cons for their failures because when I do, they make change. Even the Carolina Ren Fair took my very tame comments about water fountains very seriously. I love creating change by complaining. But sewage water at a con is a bad look for Katsucon. And Katsucon does not own the Gaylord. They rent it. They get a contract with them. And just as Katsucon would be liable for damage that they caused to the Gaylord, the Gaylord is the one liable for damage done to Katsucon. The Gaylord is responsible for their own pipes. And the worst part is, they should have seen this coming. We came into setup on Thursday evening around 8 p.m., and there was already a trash can in the aisle in front of my table and a small puddle on the floor to catch the dripping overhead. Someone had already reported the leak, and the staff had notified the hotel about it. By the time we finished setting up, the leaking had slowed down on its own, and when we got to the event on Friday morning, the leaking had stopped. There were no signs of leaking the whole day until around 6:40 p.m., when the pipe suddenly burst and the incident happened. The Gaylord knew something was leaking, and while I have not been able to verify the MagFest leak claims, they at least knew it was leaking on Thursday. Enough that they had put out a trash can as their solution. Do you think that Katsu will ever leave the Gaylord?
Oh god. I feel like that building senses me coming. I feel a psychic energy from it, knowing that I am the person that made a video about all of the wild misinformation and rumors that the cosplay community continues to proliferate year after year about this convention. It's hard for me to imagine what Katsucon would look like without the Gaylord. Katsucon became the way that it is because its reputation was able to grow over social media through early famous cosplayers like Jessica Nigiri, like Yaya Han. People were able to see really beautiful photos being taken of what was at the time the highest level cosplay imaginable. Katsucon, because it takes place in the Gaylord, is able to produce really high quality photos in a way that other conventions just can't. You cannot separate Katsucon from that perception and its role that it's had as the cosplay community has shifted and grown over the last couple of years.
From the artists that I talked to, the con has done everything they can. They are potentially looking at even further compensation. We don't know if that will come, but I was told that there were talks. But what we do know that they did is that they extended the hours of the Artist Alley on Saturday to make up for the lost time. But on Sunday, whoever was in charge of getting people to leave was being a little aggressive, as captured by Lee.
It's too much. It's too much. There's 2 minutes left here. Like, come on, man.
I hope Katsucon goes as above and beyond as they can, but at the end of the day, there's actually only so much they can do because, like, legally, the artists have no legal ties between them and Katsucon. According to this comment from the con, the artists have gotten in contact with the Gaylord so that the damages can be settled between them. And the artists that I talked to confirmed that they had been in contact with the hotel and Katsucon, and that while Katsucon had been doing what they can, the artists each have to speak with the hotel individually. It's actually also part of the contract that the artists signed to vend that Katsucon and the Gaylord are not responsible for any injury or damage while vending. But I think we all know that a burst pipe is clearly the Gaylord's fault. So I'm happy that they are actually stepping up to pay these people, though I think it's so good of them to have made them go through it in the first place.
As someone that has been going to this con for a really long time, I found that this past Katsucon was one of the most balanced conventions I've been to in a really long time. Even if it was a very wet year for some of the artists in Artist Alley. And I hope in my heart of hearts that the artists that were impacted by this see like sales and growth and traffic to their stores as a result of the viral moment that this burst pipe created.
But that is the entire reason I am making this video. Linked in the description are storefronts to every artist that was in the area of the leak. We have to focus on the people that were affected by this because we don't know what, if any, compensation they will receive or how long that will take. These are independent artists facing financial struggles in one of the few jobs left where people are actually putting up boundaries to protect artists from AI art slop. And if they choose to take legal action, or even if they're just waiting for the Gaylord's insurance to pay up, that stuff takes a while and they'll need support. And hey, you might be like, why are you making such a big fuss over pieces of paper printed with pretty fan art of anime characters? And like, yeah, I am so happy that we are talking about wet paper, but that wet paper was also somebody's livelihood. So let's enjoy the story of one of the most wild things to have ever happened at such an iconic convention and support those affected if we can. It did not rain poop at Katsucon, but we've got the power to make it rain on those artists. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support the channel directly, you can check out my Patreon, where you'll get some exclusive content like weekly live streams and monthly update videos. But if you're just watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sending the video to a friend or your mom, or subscribing, then you're supporting the channel too, so thank you. And if you want some extra content, do check out my second channel, Sarah Spaceman Surplus, where my Patreon streams get re-uploaded in edited form after they turn a year old. It's all very chatty and goofy and rambly and just silly, goofy stuff. So if you want more of that, check that out. But the biggest thank you to my newest big support tier patrons: Zach, Adrian, Must Be Micah, Candy's Cosplays, Virgilicious, and Twandy Cosplays. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.